Good morning, welcome to another live video on Sharman's YouTube channel. Let's get into the 1986 New York Mets. From the book One Year Dynasty, The Inside the Rise and Fall of the 1986 Mets, Baseball's Impossible, One and Done Champions. Let's get into Chapter 8, man, Sledgehammer, July 1986. Let's get into it, man. This is what Chapter 8, Sledgehammer, July 1986. Let's get into it, man. Some contend that hip-hop didn't kick off until the summer of 1986, with Run DMC's reimagining of Aerosmith's Walk This Way. Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead slipped into a diabetic coma for 5 days in July, then slipped back out of it to tour for another decade. It was the summer of Big Hair and Poison Well, the debuting glam metal group of that name, plus unnecessary umlauts for the successes of Motley Crue, whose drummer Tommy Lee married Heather Locklear, the 24-year-old feather-haired beauty who found time for love and metal while starring in 2 ABC dramas, as a gold digger on Dynasty and as a policewoman in the William Shatner vehicle T.J. Hooker. July also saw Tit for Tat on the other end of the musical scale, 1 week after Jensen had its first #1 hit with Invisible Touch. Peter Gabriel knocked his own hit band mix out of the top spot with Sledgehammer. Boombox, live punk, car stereo, Walkman, or even a state-of-the-art $600 compact disc player the summer of 1986 wasn't subtle on the airs. Likewise, the 86 Mets weren't subtle on the odds. The Mets were televised all over the country. It was not just the ABC, NBC national games, which seemed to feature the Mets every week. The Mets had their own superstation. WOR had covered the Mets since 1962. Birth in addition to airing the Islanders, Rangers, Knicks, Nets, and pro wrestling at various times. But the station always seemed kind of rinky-dink. Even a little naughty with the bawdy Benny Hill show, as well as other accented imported fare not seen elsewhere. Now it was national. You could think, or in the case of the other major league owners, blame Atlanta Braves owner Ted Turner, about the South, that told his way into the National League and into living rooms across the country. So in 1970, Turner purchased Atlanta station WJRJ, channel 17 on the UHF dial. 2 years later, he put the first Braves game on a rebranded channel. In 1976, he created the first superstation by beaming a signal via signal satellite to different cable systems around the nation. It was basic cable and it was good. If you like old black and white movies, within a year he had bought his chief programming, the Braves and NBA's Atlanta Hawks. In 1980 came Cable News Network, or CNN. In 1981 struck Turner time, starting TBS programming at 5 after an hour and a half, leading to separate, distinct, and unpaid listings and TV Guide in 1985. Turner time never stopped as the station went 24 hours. About 1986, he added even more old movies with the $1.4 billion purchase of the MGM Film Library, eventual foundation of Turner Network Television. WOR had no such interesting milestones. Wasn't even in the same league as Chicago superstation WGN, which had tripled its audience in the past 3 years. It was on with a solid lineup of reruns, multiple sports teams, Harry Carey screaming and singing from Wrigley Field, as daily kind of programming, the soap operas. But WOR had the Big Apple. Even if the station was located in Secaucus, New Jersey, it also had the Mets. The majority of Mets fans' games were on free TV on WOR as opposed to its cable-provided sports channel. The Mets made $17 million per year from Cablevision mogul Charles Dolan, more than double the Yankees' take at that point, but much of New York was still wired for cable. 20 years after Manhattan received the service as an experiment to circumvent interference from all buildings, Cable TV finally started appearing in test markets in other boroughs in 1986. After years of litigation, wrangling, industry disinterest, the other four boroughs in the country's number one market could pay $13 to $16 per month for the kind of viewing choice that people in places like Grand Island, Nebraska, had been enjoying for years, as if it was as if a door had been opened and people could step outside and run free, except it was TV. So it was pretty much the opposite. It wasn't free, still a beaver anyway, body. Television had landscape was fertile ground for expansion. The big three networks still show movies 2 nights a week. With reality TV far in the future, network programmers showed no fear in bending reality with Pat, like MacGyver, Max Headroom, Highway to Heaven, Alf, Starman, Don't Forget Dallas, where Bobby Ewing, played by Patrick Duffy, had been dead all season but showed up in the shower last 10 seconds of the show's 1986 finale. The whole season was a dream, get it? The star of Fox as the fourth network in the fall of 1986 did little to boost the overall quality of scripted programming. WOR, known to generations of New Yorkers as Channel 9. To generations of New Yorkers as Channel 9 didn't seem a savior in terms of content. Reruns of my favorite Martian, Bewitched, Heart to Heart, Patrick Partridge Stamp Family, as well as at least there was Benny Hill. If you made a batting order of local stations based on merit, Channel 9 would have been like the picture at the bottom of the lineup behind Channels 2, Channel 4, NBC, Channel 5, Fox 7, C11, WPIX, 13, PBS. But WOR set station records for ratings in 1986 when the Mets were on. 30 years later, VCR long since put the pasture by the DVR. Another services the same mantra applies as it did. Then, in terms of programming, live events rule. 1980s, the video cassette player recorder freed people who previously been trapped by the start times of their favorite shows to instead work at their leisure if they could get the VCR clock to stop blinking 12 o'clock. But tape sporting events remain like fruit that can sway with a phone ring, a beat, or update. Your enjoyment of last night's recorded Mets Cardinals game tries to change the moment the outcome is known. This was a common enough 80s experience that the first time viewers would see Jerry's apartment in the pod for Seinfeld. He's watching TV. The phone rings and picks it up and says, "If you know what happened in the Mets game, don't say anything. I taped it. Hello." It's a wrong number. But a moment later, the door bursts open and Kramer is introduced to the entertainment universe with the words, "Boy, the Mets really blew it tonight, huh?" Yeah, New York was a Mets town. For a fleeting moment, you might have even believe it could have become a Mets country. In case the Mets and some advertisement at the Yankee Stadium subway stop were too subtle, only a few names were needed for the TV commercials being out around the country. The country. Now, so what's baseball like? It ought to be. Ron, baseball's great when my people go out there and they throw the ball hard, and hit it hard, and catch it hard. That's baseball. Keith, it's a gratifying feeling when you get a base load, hit it in the ninth inning. Lynn, I think it's the way I play hard, aggressive, and try to come out on top. Gary cheering for the home team. Hojo hard work. Sweet a lot of dirt. Sweat a lot of dirt. Baseball ought to be winning, Roger. David, baseball is like it ought to be. We should have a championship in New York. Announced the 1986 Mets. Baseball had like it ought to be. Do the Mets feel invincible? In case anyone wondered why the rest of the country wasn't so fond of New York or the Mets or Gary Carter, bring your all-star catcher directly to the camera in St. Louis and answer the question. Penalty for the ABC Monday Night Baseball audience. I think more than anything, it's a feeling of confidence. Being invincible is a pretty big word, but I'll say this ball club, if we get down or 1-2 runs, we feel we can come back. We got the kind of talent on this ball club that we feel that we can score a lot of runs. We got a great pitching staff as well. We got 2 guys with 9 wins, 2 guys with 8 wins, Roger McDowell 7 wins. So we just got a good bunch of guys, great chemistry on the ball club. We just feel like we can win every game. Then he smiled at the end, as if it was just starting stating facts. He detractors called him Cameron Carter because how he seemed to milk those moments and shook his wet perm and his ivory soap commercial. He had the numbers right. It was just that 99.44 slash 100% pure ivory. In a time when wins meant everything to pitchers, the press, the public, the Mets rotation entered July looking like this. Sid Fernandez, 9-2. Dwight Gooden, 9-3. Bobby Ojeda, 9-2. Ron Darling, 8-2. With no other National League team having any pitcher with more than 8 wins, the front four of the Mets had all reached that mark with the cumulative mark of 35-9, 57 starts, not to mention ERA of 3 under 3.00 ERA, and averaging more than 7 innings per start. As a reliever Roger McDowell, the Daily News Met of the month for June was 7-0, averaging almost 2 innings per relief on a stage outing. Sid Fernandez began July by beating the Cardinals 2-1, becoming the National League's first 10-game winner for a team that was 30 games over 500. A day later, they left St. Louis 31 games over 500, 11.5 games ahead. It was July 4th. They would not skip in the fireworks, though. The like button. If you like the content so far, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Fireworks night at Shea Stadium was always a special night. A carnival at the field crowded with a mix of young couples on dates, so with young people getting drunk. It was great, from dates and drunks to parents, older people coming for a night out, and kids up way past their bedtimes, fidgeting through the game and gnawing on the nib that once held cotton candy, even with the promise of a long walk to their cars in an epic traffic jam. Most of everyone stayed for the whole game. No matter the score, people stayed to see America's first family of fireworks, the Gucci family, who had immigrated from southern Italy to Long Island in the 1850s. In the formative years of the Gucci's association with the Mets, starting in 1979, the team was really out of contention by July 4th. The 86 Mets, on the other hand, were so far ahead in the standings by fireworks night, they were in a different stratosphere. The Mets seemed to spot the Astros 2 runs in the first inning to provide drama for the largest shake gathering of the regular season. And when the teams were tied after 9 superb innings by Ron Darling, they had to spot the Astros 2 more runs in extra innings. The Astros were determined to hold on to the win, as rookie manager Hal Lanier made 5 defensive changes in the bottom of the 10th, all undone by reliever Frank DePino's leadoff walk to the next strike throw. As WR producer Bill Webb focused on the fidgeting and frustrated Astros manager, Lanier had little choice to put relieving the lefty to face Darryl Strawberry. When Straw crushed his 4th hit and second home run of the game, and no doubter the center, Lanier hit the floor of the dugout. We left in DePino, who left the ball over the plate that Ray Knight launched to the picnic area, the lone empty area of the park, because it was in the line of fire for the fireworks. The rest of the stadium is packed as a ballpark can be for an extra inning game. They donated on cue as the Mets won their 7th straight. Knight, who struck out his first 4 times, came out for the curtain call as the dean from York Blair. Frank Sinatra start spread the news, and the Mets are doing exactly that. Tim McCarver shouted on WR over the noise that shake, spreading the news that they are right now the dominant team in this game in any of the league. The Mets led by 12.5, the second lowest 4th of July lead in National League history after the 1912 New York Giants. They don't even need a superstation to spread that kind of news. The torture of ex-Yankee Hal Lanier continued the next afternoon as the Mets won their 8th straight 2-1 by Dwight Gooden's 10th victory of the year. Despite all the complaint about the vision diminished Doc, at 21, he was still one of the 10 youngest players in the National Leagues. He was named to start the 57th All-Star game. Cardinals manager Buddy Hoser had heard enough about the Mets already. He did not want to lose the All-Star game. Again, in 1983, he managed the National League, and the league lost for the first time in a dozen years. The All-Star game It's an exhibition short with separate leagues, presidents, umpire schedules, and attitudes of superiority, exuding from both sides. No adding incentive was needed. Most would have scoffed at the concept of making it count by taxing Sports Series home field advantage as an enticement to take the All-Star game more seriously as it happened in 2000. Wild horses couldn't drag me to it. No interest. They made it into a circus like the NBA All-Star game. Plus, he thinks it was a very good thing. World Series home field advantage was still turned by league rotation because the Mets would net every edge come October. But in July, much to the dismay of Whitey Duck in the National League, it was the American League's turn to start in midsummer at Wayne Street. Its 3-2 victory at the Astrodome began a run that would see the American League win 19 of the next 23 All-Star games. Plus, not one very awkward side. Boston's Roger Clemens, who did not lose a game until July, was 15 wins at the break, were the most in a decade, threw 3 perfect innings on 2 days rest. Gooden was less than perfect in 3 frames, surrendering a 2-run homer by Lou Whitaker in the second inning to take the loss. If the blame was needed for the defeat, it was rather the attempt to look at the blue and orange racing stripes. Racing stripes. Called him the National League dugout. The Mets' 5 representatives and 4 starters were the most in team history. Doc allowed the big hit in the game. Out of heart of the National League, or like Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, Darryl Strawberry went combined 1 for 10. Though Straw, the leading vote getter among the fans, did hammer half the National League home runs, helped with the home run derby, 1 shot hitting a roof speaker. Sid Fernandez, National League's leader in wins with 12, struck out the side in scoreless 8th inning, despite 2 walks and a double steal. If you wanted to get technical, there were 7 Mets in Houston. Davey Johnson serving as first base coach, was established honorary captain, though Staub sported a Colt 45 uniform like the one he wore as a rookie. Rusty was very much a Met. He was having a blank week. Staub, who retired in 1985, the 7th most games played in Major League history, was feted at Shea the day before the break. The whole state team coming out to surprise him in orange wigs with their uniforms stuffed to simulate to the grand orange physique exhibition lost aside. The Mets stood at the head of the class at the height of the summer in 1986. The always critical New York Post even handed out 6 A's on the team's mid-season report card, including out 1 to David Johnson. The Post also distributed 2 A- and 5 B+ when it came to deportment. However, the A6 Mets will be kept at the school. Three fights in 12 days. Records are not kept for fighting with frequency. But when it comes to rough and tumble clubs, the A6 Mets were in their own league. Flashback before the All-Star games, the first of those fights are the team's 3rd fight of the year for those keeping the scorecard at home, which was shown coast to coast by NBC cameras on hand for a special game of the week, Friday before the break. Then Dykes led off the home first with a walk, Lloyd Backman fouled with a drag bunt, dove headlong into first ahead of on his lucky tag after the runners moved up a base on the ground and out. Braves pitcher David Palmer faced Gary Carter. His catcher, when both were exposed, Palmer tossed him a meatball, kicked the air as soon as Carter swung. Kid circled the bases and zoomed curtain call infuriated Palmer. Next pitch drilled Darryl Strawberry to the bat. Strawberry threw his helmet and headed right for Palmer. The Braves suddenly not so brave as he threw his glove as a fast slugger, then ducked away. Braves catcher Ozzie Virgil slowed very surprised by behind, but Keith Hernandez was among those who did reach the pitcher. The fight ended soon, but the nightmare continued for Palmer. He was not ejected, suffered the indignity of facing Carter again the second on a grand slam and another curtain call. They act as though they won the 7th game of the World Series. I told Keith Hernandez when we were scuffling around, you hit 15 home runs, but don't shut me up. Carter's 2nd home run, his 10th career grand slam, gave him 16 home runs for the year. The 7 RBI were a career high. Gave him 65 to take the lead from Mike Schmidt also called Sid Vanez's first career complete game shutout, which may have been the best overall start of the pitcher's career. El Cid had 3 hits at the plate, while allowing just 2 on the mound. NBC following the Mets across the country like deadheads, broadcasted the Mets game for the 7th time already in 1986 on Saturday. Pre-game host Marv Albert, who worked in the home market as well, not afraid to have fun with the team and asked Strawberry Down. Realized that under New York State boxing released this mismatch, they listed at 6'6", 6'1", and in fact, NBC's fight Dr. Freddie Pacheco. Freddie Pacheco had the leading on in his unofficial scorecard. Strawberry having domestic issues that would culminate with him breaking his wife's Lisa's nose during the postseason altercation skirted Albert's Eden and brought the subject back to how the Mets want to be treated by others. He gained some type of respect that they just can't do that because a guy hit a home run and celebrated. After the Mets outscored Atlanta in a 4-game sweep, 20-2, taking a 13.5 game lead to the break. They did not miss a beat in the second half opening. They promoted Nolan Ryan, the Houston bullpen, to the point that shortstop Greg Reynolds tossed the last screen for the Astros in a 13-2 rout. But the baseball guys were fickle, and they were to humble the 86 Mets on the field. The team will be tripped up in their favorite off-field setting, a bar. The place was called Cooters. The Houston Dance Club was where 6 Mets had to celebrate for Tim Tebow's first child. Dallas Roy Hearn took off for a little while, and the other 4, Rondon, Bob Hader, Rick Aguilera, and Tuffle soon wished they were left as well. Tuffle, among the least likely Mets to end up in such a situation, walked out holding out a drink and was confronted and handcuffed by off-duty police serving as security. Darwin, who taken his loss early in the night, took another one, came to the aid of his teammate, and was pushed up against the glass door, shattered. Ojeda and Aguilera tried to persuade the officers to take it easy and found themselves arrested as well. Holding at 2 a.m. before were not released from their holding cell. Thanks for hitting the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Ojeda tried to persuade officers to take it easy, but found themselves arrested as well. Holding at 2 a.m. before were not released from their holding cell until the next afternoon. Darley and Tuffle posted bond of $8,000 each. Ojeda and Aguilera $800 apiece. That's $1 million worth free publicity for the bar. Just add to the team's bad boy reputation. It was typical Mets. The man Hearn said years later at the Cooters gate, still thankful he left early that night. Each of the 4 players' lockers had black strips that would say jailball. Stu was outfitted with an empty can of Budweiser, a cup marked tequila, well as a bagel, a bar of soap, and a razor, 1 cigarette, and a book of matches. Media had a failed day with the story. The New York Times even calling it the Mets Copa band, not the 1997's Barry Manilow song of the New York club where a 1957 fight with Patriots led to the Yankees trading second baseman Billy Martin, whose birthday they had been celebrating. The Mets would not trade their second baseman for a second 5 years, and Tuffle later returns to the Mets as a minor league manager and instructor. 3 days removed from the incident, serving as third base coach on the Mets team, but many of the players weren't even born when Cooters last made news. Tuffle looked off toward the wall and reminded of this incident. It's one of those things that happened, he said with a wan smile. I was 57 years old. That's something that's gone way beyond me. Charles would be dropped in an incident forgotten, but not in 1986. The Mets stumbled off the season off the field for the last 2 days in the Astrodome as fans hooted in honor of their new favorite Lego dance club. It was that broke-off defeats came after the Mets beat up the Astros bullpen in the 9th inning. The night after the Cooters affair, the Mets rallied against Mike Scott and Dave Smith, light-hitting shortstop Craig Reynolds, who pitched a mop-up lead from the top of the 9th. Just 2 nights before, circled the bases, getting a game-winning home run at the bottom of the 9th on Saturday. Mets rallied again the next afternoon for forgery, a tie, and the game dragged on until a bang-bang play ended the game in 15th. Hernandez, Carter, and Davey Johnson drove with umpire Greg Bone in 5.5 hours after the first pitch. The game was the longest the Mets would play all season, the regular season. The last entry on the Mets fight docket shouldn't have happened. Well, all the fights shouldn't have happened, but in this case, the game should have been over before any punch was thrown. The Reds, who a few weeks later seen 1960 sweep the Mets in the lone club to do it, so at Shea, a 3-1 lead with 2 outs in the 9th at Riverfront Stadium on July 22nd. Reds rookie Scott Terry could almost taste his first major league victory. Then Ron Robinson walked Lynn Dykstra and missed the plate by an inch on a two-strike pitch to Tim Teufel. 2 pitches later, Robinson allowed a ground rule double to Teufel his third hit in as many tries as running with Houston's finest. Lefty John Franco in the first hit yet was summoned to retire the Mustachio, and Franco did his job, introducing Max to hit a fly to 3-time Gold Glove winner Dave Parker on the edge of the warning track in the right field. Reds TV announcer Big Ben was ready to pronounce this a win. Parker, this one, no, drops the ball. It's tied up as Parker coughs it up a routine fly ball to right field. Clean. Franco was furious, bouncing the ball off the mound as he cursed. Groans from the riverfront became boos when the next batter, Gary Carter, hit a high fly to the right stringer. Parker cut it in front of Eddie Miller at the last second and caught the ball with one hand. The game should have been over. It raged on for another 2 hours. But 2 hours was some of the most entertaining baseball in the summer of 1986. So on the bottom of the night of the 10th inning, Pete Rose, the Reds manager, all-time hits leader, called himself to bat for Franco. Collected career hit number 4,247. Eric Davis sat on the bench with 45 stolen bases because of a sore hand came into pitch run. The one area the Mets had trouble with was opponents' base stealing, and Davis stole second with ease. The 106 steal, 133 tries against New York catchers, and then Davis tried to steal third. As Davis stood in head of Gary Carter's throw, raised Knight shoved Davis as if he would push him off the base and tag him. Davis shoved Knight right hard and well. He must not have been following the Mets closely in '86. Knight co-copped him, and an instant later, Carter tackled Davis, catching the base steal at last. Kevin Mitchell, Reds pitcher, martial arts practitioner, Johnny Denny went at it. Eddie Miller took out J.C. Roscoe, who just struck him out on the pitch that helped start it off. Dave Parker, the biggest guy in the field, and still storing over his era in any earlier tallest bodies around. When order was restored, the umpires did the tossing. Knight and Davis were gone. Pitcher Tom Browning had to pitch run for pitcher runner. Mitchell, who came in after Strawberry just for argument, saying was stunned after the fight, as was hot-tempered Reds pitcher Mario Soto. The limits of the 24-man roster, the Mets had just one position player left and 2 spots to fill. Davey Johnson was livid that the Mets lost 2 position players, but the Reds lost a player who couldn't bat and starting pitcher likely to play. Johnson fell into the camp of managers who did not use both catchers in the game, except in an emergency, had a doozy of an emergency in Cincinnati. Ed Herman, his last position player, put on the catching gear. All-star catcher Carter became the 80th third baseman in Mets history. It's the last relief pitcher, Roger McDowell, came in to face Wade Roden of Roscoe. His pitcher, when the fight started, moved to right field. Campy might call the situation sort of familiar. The Mets' 19-inning, 16-13 win in Atlanta the previous 4th of July, when abysmal hitting Braves reliever Rick Camp tied the game with a home run came to mind. Against the Braves, Johnson had let nothing get in the way of winning. The Mets blew saves in the 8th, 13th, or 18th innings. Even if he needed to use a reliever for 6 innings, if he had to bust up his rotation, use a start to finish at 4 a.m. And then the July 22nd, 1986 game would end up much earlier. But it was memorable in many ways, starting with Carter. Carter, who caught all 19 innings in Atlanta the year prior, had all but 1 inning of major league experience at third base as a rookie in 1975 without any chances. He morphed into Mike Smith on the riverfront after it was baptized with the bunt, proving the sacrifice and throwing it to first. It was challenged on the next play, grabbing a hard hit, looking the runner back to second, gunning it to first. There were others out of position as well. After an inning in right field, Roscoe came back to pitch. McDowell, huge grin on his face, grabbed a mitt more suited to the task, head to right field. Roscoe got through the inning, but McDowell did start the 12th against righty Buddy Bell because the lefty Parker was on deck. Pete Rose and the rest of the Reds dugout thumbing through The rule book could tell you. Rule 3.03 stipulates pitcher to position change can be made just one per inning. The rules allowed it, so I did it. Johnson explained 3 decades later helped us win a game. It wasn't so easy. Facing Roscoe, Bell hit up smash the third, called dove for, but his throw was just too late. That was directed to spots in left field with Mookie Wilson as Dave Parker stepped up. The Cobra bounced the single to right. With the experience Wilson there, Bell held at second. Pitcher Carl Willis of the Reds squared to sacrifice. Hernandez attacked in the style that made him the scourge of runners throughout the National League, punching on the bunt to the left of the mound, throwing it on the run to third, then Carter gunning across the diamond, Suffolk at first to complete a 3-5-4 double play. For the fourth straight inning, the Mets left the winning run in scoring positions. The Reds owner Marchot left for the night, but most of the 20,707 that showed up stuck around. Why wouldn't they? At the top of the 13th, Will stranded 2 Mets. At the bottom of the inning, McDowell returned to the mound. Roscoe went back to right field, caught a line drive from Future Hall of Fame Terry Perez. I just said to Jesse that hopefully I was going to get him a fly ball. Snagged native McDowell, who saw Dykstra cut in front of him to make the catch. The winning run on second in the 12th. So the next day I would like to have put out, but I'd rather have the win. But that's what McDowell got when Howard Johnson crushed a Ted Howard 2-2 curveball to the second deck. In the 14th, Roscoe went 0-for-1 with the walk in the outfield debut. Scored with Ed Hearn on the Ojo's home run. McDowell got 3 ground balls in the 14th for the win. His first after 4 straight losses, including a successful walk-off setbacks to the Astros. The lost weekend in Houston forgotten. The swag was back. If it had ever left, as Hojo from, us, we're probably the cockiest team in the league. People claim. I think our other teams feel that way, and they come after us. But we enjoy fighting. If that's what it takes, we'll fight every team. You can't push us around. No one else was going to try anymore. That's it for that. So I'm done. I'll be in chapter 9 tomorrow. Just routine, man. August 1986. So I'll be back at 1 o'clock to look at the Boston Celtics of 1981. 45 years later, that's the first championship that Larry Bird won as a basketball player in professional basketball. He won his first championship in 81 for the Celtics and restoring them back to prominence. So I'll be on the docket at 1 o'clock. And then at 2 o'clock, we play an interview that I did with a quarterback named Darian Hagan of Colorado Buffaloes. Used to play for them, won the national championship. That's an interview that I did a few years back. So I'll be back for that. That'll be it for today, for his live streams. Until then, talk to you at 1 o'clock.